All right, let's move on now to the final question of the day. And the final email today comes to us from Barry Wiesman, who writes, "To me, Game of Thrones is the greatest TV show in history, and I've never looked forward to anything as much as the upcoming final season. I wanted to know if you saw the interview with the CEO of HBO saying that he's seen the rough cuts of all the final 6 episodes, and he basically said that the final season is 6 epic movies. Do you think Game of Thrones is about to deliver us something that has never been seen before on television? Thanks." And before we get that, Barry, I'll just give full disclaimer. I do not think Game of Thrones is the greatest television show in history, but I am a Game of Thrones fan. And I've become as each season has progressed, I've become a bigger fan. So I do like the show. Now, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, the CEO of HBO, of course, the network that produces Game of Thrones, he was giving an interview, I believe, to Variety. And he talked a little bit about his experience. He just watched the final 6 episodes. Here is what he had to say. This is the CEO, Richard Pelper. He said this: "It's a spectacle. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who, by the way, are making Star Wars movies now, have done 6 movies. The reaction I had while watching them was, I'm watching a movie. They knew the bar was high. They exceeded the bar. I watched them twice without any CGI, and I'm in awe. Everybody's in for an extraordinary treat of storytelling and magical production." Again, that's the CEO of HBO. And again, look, take this with a grain of salt. What do we expect the head of the network that's airing these series to say? I mean,
Right.
when's he going to come out? "Hey, folks, don't bother with this one. It's a pile of..." But still, it's pretty exciting here. Now, Robert, I know you are a big Game of Thrones fan. You hear comments like this coming out. Does it move your needle either way?
Well, I think Game of Thrones has been extraordinary, and I think in television history there have been few things that represent the pinnacle of achievement in television entertainment the way Game of Thrones does. In terms of its epic scope, the epic characters, it really is an astonishing storytelling achievement, and the fact that HBO got behind it, and it started out not a sure thing. It was really difficult. They reshot, I heard, most of the pilot. And it might not have worked. I mean, the fact that this worked, I mean, think about the fact it's based on a series of books that has never been finished yet. So they started out with this great literary roadmap of how to make the show that just ended halfway through. And they've worked with George R.R. Martin. But if they stick the landing on this, I think it's going to go down as truly, one of the great achievements in television history. But I don't even think of it. It's not television, it's HBO. But it's different than a TV series like, say, Star Trek or The Twilight Zone. But I think it is an astonishing achievement in the medium. And by the way, I cannot wait. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. And if it turns out the way the president of HBO says, we're going to have a hell of an April and May. And May's my birthday, so it should actually
Happy birthday to you.
Let me tell you, it's gonna Game of Thrones is gonna end within in the week of my birthday. If it's 6 episodes and they start in early April, can you imagine? I'm having a big birthday party and we're gonna watch GOT. Let me tell you.
And then you're going to go watch Endgame for the 4th time.
Absolutely.
After that.
I mean, wouldn't that be great to watch the Game of Thrones finale and then watch Endgame on the same day? I'm gonna do that just because you can do it.
Yeah. Still hasn't seen Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, but you're going to see those 2 things. Oh, I had to slip that in there. At the same time, the one thing you got to say, though, is look, you can't give enough credit to Netflix as far as what they've done to evolve as a content creation body. Remember, they just used to be a funnel through which they fed you everybody else's content. They have really developed into a great content creation place. Some of the series on Netflix. No. I mean Netflix.
Okay.
Netflix has evolved itself into a great content creator. They've done a great job. A lot of their series that they have are some of the favorite series out there that people love and enjoy watching. But they've never gotten to the level of HBO yet. And the one thing, my favorite show of all time is still Battlestar Galactica. The David
reboot.
Moore, the Ronald Moore.
Another
one.
fantastic achievement in televised fantasy science fiction.
But one of the things that this Game of Thrones series has done is brought not just an epicness, but an event-like feel to every week's episode. Every week's episode felt like an event that culture everywhere gets put on pause.
Yeah.
because everybody on the planet is stopping whatever they're doing to sit down and watch the new episode of Game of Thrones. And that is something, while I think Battlestar Galactica is better, I think Sons of Anarchy is better, whatever, I think Game of Thrones is great. And that is something that not even those shows that I even prefer have been able to accomplish like Game of Thrones has. Everybody stops what they're doing when Game of Thrones is on. And if you miss that Game of Thrones, the whole world knows, stay off your damn social media accounts because everybody's going to be talking about it. And it's the likes of which I have never seen before with a television series. And it's going to be hard to replicate moving forward.
I agree. I mean, even the emotion that I felt like Ramsay Bolton. You know,
oh my God! Yeah.
I've never sat at home in my off hours and thought I wanted a character on a TV show to die. Like I spent time pondering. Does that make me bloodthirsty? I mean, I wanted him to die horribly. And the Battle of the Bastards, that episode was one of the most satisfying hours of TV, if not the most. The last two of that season were so good, you know, and then the High Sparrow gets blown up. I was so happy. I mean, that
was a great episode.
I was sorry to see Marjorie go, but you know, it was watching that show, just the emotions that it generates in you. I mean, that's what you want. That's what you want your entertainment to do, and it delivers, man. That show just 1-2 gut punch every week. I mean, it's so much fun to watch.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. You know, never wanting to see a character dies so much. And of course, we all thought that earlier in Game of Thrones.
Right.
Was it Joffrey, right?
Joffrey, man.
And we thought Joffrey, that's the one's got it. Then they topped Joffrey with that. But it reminds me, we were talking a little bit ago about John Wick. It reminds me of the first time watching John Wick and sitting in the movie theater when that dude kills that puppy. If a group of nuns had been sitting in front of me in the theater, they would have stood up and said, that motherfucker gotta die. I mean, you would have heard nuns get up and you could feel it. You could feel it in the theater. Like when that dude killed that puppy, you literally, I saw girlfriends like with their boyfriends like just seething at that guy's gotta die. And the most brilliant thing about that, and here's how it carried over into Game of Thrones. The most brilliant thing about that was that move where they had the bad guy kill the puppy in John Wick. There is nothing the filmmakers could have done that would have gotten the audience so behind the cause of the hero.
Right.
Because at that moment, that whole movie is about this guy getting revenge for his dog.
And it's not just his puppy. It's the puppy that his dead wife left him after she passed away.
Oh, my God. And nothing they could have done would have gotten the audience more behind the cause of the hero. And they were with him because no matter what atrocity John Wick commits in that movie, everybody in the audience went, justified. And and for his car, of course. And then you carry that over when you can develop a villain like Ramsay and all the atrocities that he committed. Again, it's like people watching Game of Thrones, no matter what Sansa, no matter what Jon Snow, no matter what anybody did to get him, the whole audience would have looked at the TV and gone, justified.
Well, it's also, you've got Reek. Reek is playing that guy who Ramsay Bolton, who Ramsay Bolton cut off his, did horrible. I love the fact that in John Wick, you've got Michael Blomkvist from the Swedish versions of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, this good guy who's playing the father of Reek from Game of Thrones. I mean, again, with the secondary characters and the other, it's just the actors in that. Everything about it was great. Same with Game of Thrones, man. The problem with Game of Thrones is, I know they're doing a prequel series, but what are we all going to do with our lives when there's no more Game of Thrones?
You know, you sound like a lot of NFL football fans when the Super Bowl's over. It's like, now what do we do?
I don't know.
Yeah, but apparently there's like 2 or 3 new Game of Thrones series that they're developing.
Yeah, but it's like it's a prequel series. You know, prequels, it's like, the problem is it's like doing The Hobbit after you've done Lord of the Rings. You've done this apocalyptic story about the end of the world, and then you go back and you tell a story of a skirmish.
Well, here's the thing. Prequels are okay. Everybody knows I've got an aversion to prequels, but you go far enough back in time where there's really no connective tissue between this way back their story and what went on in the current stuff, then it almost doesn't even feel like a prequel in a way, right? Like, so if you do Star Wars, I don't want more prequels, but you go Old Republic,
well, yes,
where you separate it by thousands of years, then that's fine. Then there's no connective tissue. It'll be interesting to see what direction they go with that, with the new Game of Thrones stuff, and how people respond to it, and if they respond at all as positively as they did to the original series.